Hi everyone, this is my response to our Class 2 discussion, specifically relating to Piaget's 4 stages of development. So the first of those 4 stages is the sensory motor phase. That usually lasts from the time a child is born to about 2 years old. In this time, they usually learn object permanence, right? So if a child is playing with some Legos and their parent happens to be vacuuming and cleaning up and vacuums up one of those Legos, instead of them freaking out that the Lego was gone forever, they understand that it had to have gone somewhere, and so they might start looking for it. That decision to start looking for it is also a major part of this cognitive development in this phase. We call that goal-directed action or goal-directed motivations, right? To go ahead and start searching for where that may or may not be so they can get it back. The next phase then is the pre-operational phase, and that's approximately from that 2-year mark to about 7 years old, so about 1st or 2nd grade. And it's really in this stage that kids start putting sort of ideas to symbols, and symbols also including language. In this time, usually between the ages of 2 and 4, a child's vocabulary increases from about 200 to 2,000 words. The kids also start to learn kind of this idea of conservation, that if you have some sort of object, that it's not just going to go anywhere, again kind of relating to that object permanence, but also in the idea that if you pour water from one glass into water from a short fat glass into a tall skinny glass, that it's still going to be the same amount of water. This usually happens more towards that 1st and 2nd grade age, but is learned throughout. There's also sort of a lot of their motivations at this time are egocentric, right? So it's really kind of how will my actions affect me, but not really thinking about what's going on around them. To kind of further that example of using the Legos, right, it's kind of the idea that I want these Legos to build this giant castle that I've got imagined in my head, as opposed to thinking about their parent who is still trying to clean up the floor and hopefully doesn't get in the way of them trying to build this castle made out of Legos. The next phase is the concrete operational phase, and that's approximately from 7 years old, so that 1st and 2nd grade range, to approximately 11 years old, so that's getting kind of into like 4th and 5th grade. Kids start to understand more about this concept of physical and conceptual manipulation, relating to sort of conservation. So going back to if I want to build a different type of castle with these Legos, that I'm still going to be limited in the amount of Legos that I have, but I would actually be able to make, I'm sure, quite a few different designs depending on how many Legos you had, right? Additionally, humans start to learn this idea of seriation. So being able to group things together, being able to say, I have this many blue Legos and I have this many red Legos, I have this many white Legos, or I have this many Legos that are 4 bricks long, 3 units long, 2 units long, however it may or not be. And then the last stage is going to be the formal operational phase, and that's really from that 11 years old to 12 years old, right, from adolescence to continuing into adulthood, and sort of cognitively, or the cognitive growth that happens as we go through what would be probably our collegiate years, or just after being a teenager. When we really start to learn a whole lot about the way that we process things. Situations no longer need to be experienced, but they can be imagined, right? So this idea of sort of hypothesizing and reasoning, empathizing, sympathizing with others if you haven't been through something, sort of being able to ideate an alternative outcome to any number of situations. At this point, you go from, I don't have Legos now to build something, but I can imagine some blueprints of a castle that I want to make, or I can figure out that I need to go to the store to get Legos to actually build something like this. So those are the 4 stages. Again, it's sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and then formal operational. But a couple of things to consider here is that a lot of these are just sort of these phases are really just kind of seen as egocentric in the sense that it only pertains to one person. It doesn't really have the Piaget's phases don't really consider exposure to like other cultural and social interactions and the significant effects that those can have on cognitive growth. Obviously, too, if there's any sort of disease or learning disability that may or may not be involved, that can obviously have a significant effect too. The other part of that too is there's this idea of neo-Piagetical, or just sort of I can't remember the exact term I guess for it, but this idea that Piaget's 4 stages of development don't really consider attention and memory, attention span, and sort of like memory that has to do with all that, because if those are affected in some way, those can definitely then have an effect on development too.